Okay. Thank you very much, Carmen and Laura. I think thank you for the introduction. I'll start. Is it possible for me to see the slide? The slide that I prepared. Perfect. Okay, perfect. Basically, what I will do in this presentation as one of the grantees that we got from CIPE. I'll basically start by introducing Transparency International Zimbabwe, give a bit of a background on what we do. I'll also share a bit on terms of the project that we're particularly implementing, and also the outputs. I'll also share one of the signature initiatives that we did under this project, and share on the results that we have attained. Basically, Transparency International Zimbabwe is a non-for-profit organization, non-partisan, which exists to fight corruption and any other related vices. It seeks to promote transparency, accountability, and integrity at all levels. As an institution, we have been in existence for 25 years, and we have got 4 major units or departments that actually shape up this particular institution. We have got what you call the policy legislation and institution monitoring plane, where our major focus is to enhance or identify some of the policy gaps that are existing in Zimbabwe and give recommendations, and also train and also monitor institutions that are involved in the anti-corruption work. Also, we've got the research and communication unit, which specifically carries out researches and disseminates information to people on any anti-corruption information. And also, we've got the Advocacy and Legal Advice Center, which specifically receives clients or witnesses or victims of corruption. We've got a team of legal experts that advises people on anti-corruption related issues. We offer these services free of charge. And also, we've got the CMA, Community Mobilization and Advocacy Unit, that seeks to educate the people on the impact and the effects of corruption. Basically, this is Transparency International Zimbabwe. And for this particular initiative that we applied for a grant and CIPE, and this particular project is called Strengthened Transparency and Improved Responsive Systems During Emergencies in Zimbabwe. The project has got 2 major objectives. The first one is to increase transparency efforts in ensuring that relief reaches the intended beneficiaries in terms of disasters. And secondly, we sought to promote transparency, accountability, and integrity within the private sector during emergencies. This is as Carmen had actually introduced, partly mentioned it in the introductory remark, the impact of COVID-19. We felt that COVID-19 is an emergency, and that there's a need for us to try and respond and ensure that there's transparency and accountability and effective participation of various stakeholders in that aspect. And the project has got 3 outputs. Firstly, we intend to ensure that the public and private sector are able to track public funds during emergencies. Secondly, the output seeks to ensure that the private sector is equipped on public procurement processes. And also, we believe that one of the major issues that can ensure transparency and accountability in the public procurement is the introduction of an e-procurement system. So basically, these are the major outputs for this particular activity. Next slide, please, Laura. So some of the things that we are so particular about, or some of the challenges that we realize has been that whenever there are emergencies, there is basically lack of access to accurate and timely information. People are not able to have access in terms of how much was donated, how much was spent, or by the government, and also what has been the response mechanism by the government, especially during emergencies. So that was one of the major gaps that we are actually realizing in Zimbabwe. Secondly, there has been limited transparency and accountability in the management of public funds during emergencies. Zimbabwe basically 2 years ago was hit by a cyclone, and there were also debates. The issues of lack of transparency were realized in that particular incident. So we were convinced that when we applied for this grant, we were convinced that issues of transparency and accountability will remain a major issue, especially when government receives funds, and if there is not an effective way of tracking this, then funds might be lost. And also, we realize that there is a generally limited stakeholder collaboration or participation in ensuring transparency and accountability systems are developed. So this has been some of the issues that motivated Transparency International Zimbabwe to apply for this particular grant. And if from the model that we have, it's on your screens now, one of the issues that TIZ has been pushing for, or has been advocating for, is that there's a need to engage officials to ensure that we address these particular gaps, particularly on issues of transparency and accountability. So there's a need for us to develop an online platform that allows citizens, that allows stakeholders, that allows the private sector to be able to track on how much the government has been receiving and how much it has been utilizing, and also what has been the key, some of the procurement issues that are emerging. Before we applied we actually received the grant last year. TIZ was it actually taken the government to court, particularly the Ministry of Health and Child Care, where we were indicating that they need to release a distribution matrix. Fortunately, we won the case, and we were availed information by the ministry in terms of how much they have received, and also which are the procurement companies, which are the major procurement companies that have been awarded tenders. So it is in this case that in the in the third part, where we developed what we call an online resource tracker. So basically, it's a tracker that contains all this information in terms of the donations received, the procurement processes, and where exactly did the goods actually reach, meaning the hospitals, any government institution that might have received any COVID-19 related funds. It's actually there. So what it allows is people can actually go to on our website, or to our website, and they can actually access all this particular information. So we collected this particular information and put it in this particular online tracker. The overall overarching idea, or one of the major issues, is that this particular tracker enables it enhances informed stakeholder dialogue with the government. It actually bridges that particular gap. And also we had the major another output for this particular tracker is that it seeks to improve citizen participation during emergencies. We believe that when citizens are informed on how much the government is utilizing, they are able to follow through on that. And also in the long run, the broader objective is that it enables our lobbying and advocacy strategies to ensure that they strengthen institutions. And also it actually strengthens transparency and improve responsive systems during emergencies. So we wanted to, the Transparency International has been lobbying for something of this particular nature so that the government can introduce an online tracker that allows people to actually give a broader picture on what is happening. And also the fourth result is that it actually allows local, regional, and international stakeholders to be more confident in government's efforts during emergencies. And some of the major results for this particular tracker, Laura, if you could put to the last slide, please. Laura. Okay, so yes,
the slide is up.
Yes, thank you. So we launched the resource tracker. We launched the resource tracker in March, and so up until to date, we have been putting so much promotional material on of the tracker on social media, on Twitter, also on our YouTube account, so to try and motivate people to actually be aware on what is practically going on. So from March, on the first picture, it's an extract from the website in terms of the visits that we have been receiving from March up until June. So in total, as of 31st of June, 30 June, we have actually received, we have seen 1,838 people visiting this particular online resource tracker. And of interest, perhaps, is that there's been a steady increase. I think from March and in May, there is generally a bit of an increase in terms of people visiting. I mean, people jumping from 282 to almost 556. So this has been one of the major issues that we have been highlighting. And one of the issues that emerges is that we have presented this online tracker to the government institutions, particularly the Public Procurement Regulatory Authority of Zimbabwe. We have produced, we have actually shared the online tracker to the Ministry of Health and Childcare, and we also shared this particular tracker to NetFarm, which is solely responsible in terms of distributing the medicines, and has been one of the key players in this particular pandemic. So we've actually shared this, and from that particular view, we are anticipating to receive more information from them, because they've actually they've actually raised it as one of the most positive issues that TIZ is developed. So we are actually envisioning to update latest information from the government departments. So other activities that are supported by this particular grant has been that we have actually trained investigative journalists. We feel that they should use some of this information to expose any form of corruption that might be emerging. So we have trained close to 60 journalists who are writing extensively on corruption issues in Zimbabwe, and particularly a particular focus on COVID-19 funds. So over the years, I think almost since last year up until now, there's been a general increase in terms of reporting and analysis of COVID-19 related corruption in Zimbabwe. And I'm pleased to see that some of the journalists that we have trained have been raising some of the key issues to the various government departments and reporting them in their respective media houses. And also, we have created private and public sector platforms for engagement. Apart from this particular the resource tracker, we've created a platform for key government departments, that is the Public Procurement Regulatory Authority of Zimbabwe, to meet the private sector, to share with them the procurement processes. The idea is to instill confidence in the private sector, especially when they are bidding or they want to be involved in the public procurement processes. And overall,
so sorry to interrupt. I will ask you to please wrap up your presentation, and then maybe we can come back to any other idea that you would like to highlight during the Q&A part. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just one last, so maybe some of the issues that I mentioned is that moving forward, TIZ intends to ensure that it continues to lobby for an e-procurement process in Zimbabwe. And also we want to use this particular tracker in terms of to increase the uptake and to ensure that there is effective participation from various stakeholders, including the private sector. In brief, I'll stop there, Carmen, and then if there are any issues, I'll respond later.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Nkobani. And I see that we have a couple of questions or several questions in the chat. Please continue to post those questions, and we will get to them after we hear our two presenters who are going next. I also see Rich Tucker. I see you have raised your hand. If you could please write your question, and we will we'll ask you to unmute yourself and ask your question during the Q&A session. Thank you. And now I would like to invite our presenter from Ethiopia, Sinidu Tekalge. She is the manager of the Addis Ababa Chamber Corporate Governance Council in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. And she's responsible for promoting the benefits of implementing corporate governance and responsible business conduct, including undertaking activities for the adherence to business ethics and integrity. Prior to joining AACCSA, Sinidu has worked as a senior legal researcher in the Federal Justice and Legal Research and Training Institute. She is also an experienced teacher, teaching various law courses, including professional ethics, as a lecturer at Wallowa University. Sinidu, we look forward to hearing your experience with AACCSA. Please.
Thank you, Carmen. Hello, everyone. I will try to catch up everything within 10 minutes. My presentation is structured. First, I will introduce about Addis Ababa Chamber of Commerce and sectoral associations. Then I will brief about the goal and objective of the project, and then the context, how the project come into being. Then I will end up by highlighting the key achievements or results so far we have made. Next slide, please. Okay, Addis Ababa Chamber of Commerce and Sectoral Associations, which is abbreviated as AACCSA, is a voluntary and non-profit, non-governmental organization. It is business-based organization, and it's established in 1947, which makes it the oldest chamber in Ethiopia. It has more than 17,000 business members, which constitutes 60% of the businesses operating in Ethiopia. And this makes it the largest chamber as well in the country. It is established to serve as a bridge between the government and the business community, among other objectives. And with this purpose, it serves as a voice for the business community. And it also communicates the business community, the policies, the laws of the government, so that they can operate their business in compliance with the nation's law. It undertakes different activities, provides different services for its members, and among these, it engages in reducing trade barriers. It implements different activities and projects that aim at reducing trade barriers and creating favorable business environment. For this, we can mention that it advocates for the evolution of improved doing business. And one of these key achievements is a policy plan that it has designed for 2025. In addition to that, as corruption is one of the trade barriers, it's also working on mitigating corruption in partnership with CIPE. Addis Chamber Corporate Governance Council, which I'm running, is responsible for implementing the projects that I am going to present today, and for other agreement which AACCSA has with CIPE, which is under the cooperating and licensing agreement. Next slide, please. Yeah. The overall project goal is to mitigate corruption through the active participation of businesses. In our country context, anti-corruption activity is mainly undertaken by the government, which is the Federal Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. So AACCSA wants us to take its role to mitigate corruption by mobilizing the business community. So this is the biggest goal that we set. When we see the objective, it has two main objectives. First is to improve the culture of compliance among the business community. The business community, as Laura says, the context of the COVID's impact in general, that scenario was right in the Ethiopian context as well. So with these challenges, we have noticed that businesses were vulnerable for corrupt and unethical practices because of the COVID related measures taken by the government and the situation that the COVID has created. So we want to improve the culture of compliance through different activities. And the second is to promote transparency and accountability in the private as well as the public sector by actively engaging the business community. So it's these two objectives that drive this project. When we see the context, the grant was awarded during the state of emergency, and in our country situation, beside the general circumstances that other businesses across the globe share, the Ethiopian businesses were in a situation that could make them vulnerable to business, to corruption and unethical practice. For instance, we can raise the government take measures by modifying regular working hours for government offices, and by this there was reluctance on the side of the public servant to serve within the regular working hour, and kind of demanding corruption to serve on the extra hours. So this was one of the challenge. This is created because of the outbreak of the COVID, and because the measure taken to control the COVID. So this is one of the challenges that we hear from the public through different mass media. So we take this concern, this problem as one agenda that we need to act upon. The other is the National Bank of Ethiopia injected 15 billion birr for the private bankers in order to give debt relief and to provide stimulus loan for their customers. But this by itself isn't a problem, but the problem was there was complaints among the business community that there is lack of transparency on how these stimulus loans were provided by the private banks. So this was another issue that we want to take into account while designing our project. And the third is the restriction of movements. There was a measure taken by the government to restrict the movements by using one's own vehicle. And for this purpose, vehicle plate number was used to identify which vehicle can move today and which for tomorrow. And this gives a room for traffic officers and as well as for permit granting officers to seek bribe. So this and other problems which I didn't mention here was a situation that gave room for corruption and unethical practices. So at this chamber, because the business community is as a victim in this circumstance, and it also affects the business environment at large. So that with this context, we design a project that could help to mitigate corruption in Ethiopia. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay. This is the last slide where we want to show the results and achievements for the activities so far undertaken. The first activity that we have taken was the training activity, which the picture that shows a gathering of people holding a certificate. It's one of the activity, which is a training program that we have conducted. And this is aimed at creating awareness about anti-corruption mitigation. So we need to build the awareness of the business community so that they can be aware how to mitigate it, how they can implement the compliance program in their business operation. So this was one activity, and so far we have conducted 2 round trainings. And the other activity is an awareness creating tools, and one of these tools is poster at the back of the picture training participants is the poster where it was posted and in front of one of the government offices. We have distributed more than 240 posters, and the distribution is the first target we have selected and distributed is the ministry offices at the federal level. And these offices are those where the business community go to get different public services. So we have disseminated to these offices, and we try to assess how the posters are handled by the government offices. And during our visit, we have noted that some offices have posted at the front of their office so that every customer, including the business community, have access to the information that we want to disseminate. The third activity is SMS reminder. This goes hand in hand with the training. We believe that even if the business community has an awareness about anti-corruption, the COVID emergency situation was putting in a way that could challenge the business community to compromise ethical practices. So we want to remind them so that they can be guided by business integrity at any time. So with this purpose, AACCSA has a hotline number, which is 6047, and we use that hotline number to send SMS reminders. The reminders are sent for AACCSA's business as well as for those who have participated during our training session. So this is the activity. We have pending activities which we didn't finalize, as Carmen have introduced. The project is on implementation stage, it's not finalized. So we are on progress, but the remaining and pending activities are The first is a mobile app and SMS configuration. These are platforms that AACCSA intended to address corruption problems business encounter by conducting a survey. We want to invite businesses to report their experience if they encounter corruption or unethical practices. It may be from the side of the government, it may be from the side of other private sector, but we want to engage the business community by sharing their experiences on corruption. It may be on real time or it may be after that, but after gathering all the reports or the data, AACCSA will conduct a survey to identify whether there are gaps for the cause of the corruption or aggravating circumstances for the occurrence of corruption during the COVID, and want us to forward a recommendation to the government office, and it may take its own share to towards the identified gaps for the aggravating circumstances of corruption during the project implementation period.
Sinidu, sorry,
okay.
if you can please prepare to wrap up.
Okay, and the final activity is the video production. This is the other communication tool that we want to use to create an awareness to the public community at large and the business community in particular. And this is as we're in progress so far. One video is produced, it's at the draft stage, and we hope the if these activities are implemented, we can reach the public at large through an innovative way that the private sector has never engaged before. Thank you, Carmen.
Thank you very much, Sinidu, for sharing this this experience and the work that you have done with your colleagues at AACCSA. And I would like us to hear also from our third speaker, our third panelist, Mary Awelana Ada, from our partner organization, Ghana Integrity Initiative. Mary is a Senior Programs and Research Officer at GII, and she has worked before GII in various state and non-state organizations, including the Ghana Trade and Livelihoods Coalition, the Center for Community and Social Development, and the Ghana Education Service. She also sits on multiple representative bodies, and she is a key member of a steering committee of Ghana's Citizens Movement Against Corruption, as well as she's playing a critical role in other non-governmental organizations and social groups in Ghana. Mary, we look forward to hearing from you. Please.
Thank you very much, Carmen. And let me say good afternoon to the panelists and good afternoon to those who have made time to be on the webinar to listen to our experiences thus far. I would want to proceed to say the Ghana Integrity Initiative is the local chapter of Transparency International, and the vision of the Ghana Integrity Initiative is to ensure that we work to reduce corruption and promote good governance in the daily lives of the people and institutions. The Ghana Integrity Initiative was established in 1999, and for over 21 years, our focus has been towards various interventions that are geared towards eradicating, minimizing, if not eradicating, corruption from our society. And on that, we carry out different programs. We are known for carrying out a lot of multi-sectoral work around anti-corruption. We've done some work around research. We do research because it is the pivot with which we would definitely then be able to ensure that we provide evidence for the advocacy that we carry out. We also believe that it is important to work with others to increase the results and outcomes we achieve, and then leveraging on the impact that civil society can make. It is important to work in partnerships. So that is the organization which I belong to and I'm representing. And that is the organization which won the award from CIPE to implement the project I'm just about to talk about. So can we proceed? Next slide. Great, so then corruption in Ghana is a crime. If you look at the Act 29 and on Act 29, we're talking about sections 239, criminalizes corruption, and various governments in Ghana since independence have made sure that they have put in place some interventions with the focus of either enacting laws, developing various frameworks, and signing on to various conventions, and also practicalizing things by institutionalizing the various architecture and logistics needed to ensure that we fight corruption. Yet still, several studies have indicated that corruption remains a key developmental challenge that affects the poor disproportionately. Ghana's score on the Transparency International Index is 43 for 2020, which represented a 2-point gain in the index from 2019, which was 41. According to TI, the 2020 CPI reveals that persistent corruption is undermining healthcare systems and contributing to democratic backsliding amid the COVID-19 pandemic. And I believe most of my colleague speakers who have spoken before have reiterated this point, and let me make it that CIPE's grant, therefore, represents a unique opportunity for the Ghana Integrity Initiative to conduct a corruption risk assessment targeting the various interventions that were rolled out by our government to ensure that going forward, a lot of recommendations are made to curtail some of the excesses that could have happened as a result of the pandemic. Next. So the objectives of our research or the corruption risk assessment was to assess the resilience of government's COVID-19 socioeconomic interventions to corruption, but then also to provide appropriate policy recommendations to relevant state agencies on ensuring the integrity of social interventions in future, not just for today's pandemic and not just for COVID, but for others that might emerge. And so the scope of our work, when you look at the questionnaire, we develop on the next slide, you would see we develop a questionnaire that is twofold. But then if you look at the scope of work we looked at, we focus on issues around good governance and resource mobilization, how government promoted good governance during this COVID pandemic, and then how we were able to raise resources transparently, accountably, and with integrity. And then we also seek to look at the procurement processes and how resilient they are to the corruption risk assessment tool we developed. The other issue had to do with, or the focus issue had to do with beneficial ownership of companies that were awarded contracts. And let me say again that in Ghana, we have a legislation that's the Companies Act, which deals extensively with issues around beneficial ownership and why they constitute corrupt behavior. Then we also sought to look at tracking expenditure, service delivery, and products that were delivered. We also looked at that. And then we targeted actual beneficiaries of the various interventions that were rolled out by the government, and also issues around monitoring, because when it comes to pandemics, it becomes the normal thing is to go forth and then try to counteract or intervened to ensure that we ameliorate the suffering of the people, but have we put in place mechanisms that would then help assist us to take stock, that would then assist us to be able to come back to a point where we are able to document some of the key challenges and the benefits we have derived from the implementation of the intervention. So that is what these areas were the key areas the corruption risk assessment sought to document. And when it comes to my last slide, I speak to the methodology and also the results that we have achieved thus far. So for us, we use both quantitative and qualitative measures to, and simply, we did a simple random sampling technique to collect our data. And we collected data using two tools. One for targeted institutions. When we talk about targeted institutions, we are talking about the institutions in the public sector that are direct responsibility for ensuring that COVID-19 was fought aggressively and for ensuring that all the logistics and procurements were done according to the law. Then we had two sets of questionnaires that were used, and we covered 11 out of 16 regions in Ghana, very extensive. The major cities or major regions were two, but we decided to roll out to other regions because COVID-19 impacted everybody, and COVID-19 support went to all the regions and not just to the two greater regions of Kumasi and Accra. Data was collected from a little over 3,000 respondents, comprising the select key institutions, public institutions, and then also the general public, which comprise civil society, private sector, and then the general populace who were beneficiaries. So far, we have been able to increase knowledge and awareness of 20 key GI contacts after training them on the objectives and expected results from this project. I say so because it's not everybody who understood exactly what we wanted to do. And so this is a good output for us, and we thought we should speak to it, that people understand these processes better, they understand what a corruption risk assessment is, and the tool we use to collect data, they also understood, and we progressed on the same level of knowledge. Again, we were able to counteract the uncertainties of elections and transitions in Ghana. In 2020, despite the COVID, Ghana was going into an election, presidential and parliamentary. And for that matter, we had a lot of significant challenges with data collection, particularly from the institutions of state who were supposed to give data to us. The uncertainties of whether their positions would be maintained and the uncertainties as to whether the government in power was going to be retained was a big challenge for us. But then to counteract it, we use our networks within the institutions and then our focal points. And these focal points include people we have worked on several different projects. For instance, the Ghana Revenue Authority and also the Ghana Ministry of Finance, where we work with on our private sector project, which we reference as the multi-stakeholder business integrity forum. We have also been able to expand.
Mary, I'm sorry, can you please prepare to conclude, and we will go to questions from the
All right, so I conclude by saying we have been able to increase our stakeholder base for our multi-stakeholder business integrity forum by bringing on board trade associations which were not part of this, but because of CIPE, we were able to identify this as a key stakeholder and we brought them on board as part. And then the issue of gender mainstreaming and inclusion is a key output for us because we now do that across all our programs. Thank you very much, Carmen.
Thank you very much, Mary, for your presentation. Laura, I will pass the floor to you, please.
Awesome. Great, thank you so much everyone for those presentations. So we have gotten a number of questions from the audience throughout, and I'm sure that there's going to be more as well now that we're pivoting to the question and answer section. So moving on to the questions, let's see. So, okay. So Michael Bowadi asked the panelists, during emergency situations, citizens are mostly the victims of the emergencies. Survival issues become more important for issues of accountability. So when when the government should get citizens involved in the emergency, what exactly do you mean? And that's a question for any of the panelists.
Laura, maybe I can respond to that. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for that particular question. While I think ordinarily the issues of survival take precedence, especially during emergencies. The aspect of COVID-19 is very much unique because at the same time, we have to factor issues of fairness, fair distribution of resources. And this is where the issues of transparency and accountability come in. And where exactly should citizens be involved? Citizens become more involved in holding the government to account. And citizens become more involved also by through being represented by the CSOs, etc. And perhaps I can give an example with the context of Zimbabwe. Journalists actually played a significant role through, as well as the citizens, in raising issues of anomaly with actually exposing one of the most high level corruption scandals within the healthcare sector, where some of the goods were overpriced. People actually raised a lot of raised these issues in social media. If by any chance the person that asked the question can check, it's called the drug scandal in Zimbabwe. So it's one of the most scandals that we actually realize. So citizens play a significant role in raising these issues, and also especially when issues of fairness and equitable distribution of resources is actually involved. Thank you.
Okay, so if I may add, Carmen, to respond to the question, just to add on to what he said, for me, I believe increasing transparency and making information available to the citizens would be the key point. And I say so because, and he mentioned media, and let me take the example of Ghana, where a lot of extensive work was done through the media, sharing information on exactly what the issues are and what benefits citizens could derive from the social interventions that were being rolled out. Also, civil society played a critical role independently. For some of us, we created platforms and avenues for citizens to report. And at certain instances in the communities, community-based organizations and the religious groups were put together, and most of the interventions were channeled through this. And so when government mandates and equips and empowers the citizenry, then the citizen also takes up their role of ensuring that whatever mechanisms are provided, they are utilizing them in their communities to ensure that accountability of the duty bearer is enhanced. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So moving on to our next series of questions, we have a question from the audience that asked, It looks like this was targeted towards TI Zimbabwe. And she was asking, what has been the uptake of utilizing the tracking tool by corporates? And also what has been the uptake of using the tracking tool by CSOs?
Hello, thank you for that question. What we have done is obviously from the statistics that we shared, would hope that the numbers continue to increase with the way we are publicizing the tracker. What we have done is in almost where we are meeting the corporates and the private sector in such platforms, we've been able to publicize the tracker. And from the feedback that we're getting, especially from the corporates, they actually say it's a good tracker. And it is in this context why we have been partnering government departments, particularly the Procurement Regulatory Authority of Zimbabwe, to also publicize the tracker because it's actually evident of what they've been doing, how they've been conducting the procurement processes. But evidently there is still work to be done. We still need to ensure that the corporates, the civil society, use the tracker to its good use. They can use the tracker to also use it to account. So they can actually use the tracker to hold the government to account. And perhaps from the civic society end, I've noted that some of the civic society actors have been making reference to the resource tracker in some of their platforms. I think, and also we have realized that, like I said initially, that the investigative journalists have been one of the key people that have been taking up the tracker. So we actually hope to increase the visibility of the tracker moving on with some of the supporting activities that we're about to implement. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. So it looks like we have another question for TI Zimbabwe. And this question was asking, so basically he said, I would like to know if Zimbabwe has an access to information law. And then he said, if yes, why couldn't they use that to request information instead of going to the court for information on COVID procurement?
Okay. There are legal statutes or legal frameworks that can easily that are supposed to work in our favor as citizens or as the CSOs in accessing some of the information. For example, we've got the Constitution that actually gives us that right to actually go and request information, and also there are some of the supporting legislative frameworks, including the Public Health Act. Speaks on terms of citizens accessing information. But what is happening, like what is there on paper does not necessarily mean it actually occurs in practice. What we did initially, before we actually went to the court, we actually we were required to submit to write information to the relevant government department requesting that information, and then you are given about a period of 30 days before you actually wait for that information. And it took about almost 2 months before you actually before the government responded. So the government did not respond within the specified period, within the specified time frame. It is in that regard that TIZ, despite its lobbying efforts, because we also raised the issue on in some of the platforms, including trying to ensure that some of the parliamentarians raise that particular importance for the ministry to release the distribution matrix. But to that, there was no a positive response from the government. And it was in that regard that we took the issue to the courts, and we actually put the ministry to release this particular information, a detailed information that can be used by the citizens to know on how much they've received and how they've been utilizing those particular resources in response to COVID-19.
Great, thank you so much for sharing more of that background context. So earlier in the presentation, we had a hand raised by Rich Tucker. So Rich, I'm going to allow you to talk now and to ask your question. Rich, you're off mute if you want to ask your question. Okay, so we're gonna move on and we'll go back to Rich if he's able to unmute. So, okay, we have a question now coming in from Benedict, and we will unmute you now.
Okay, thank you, Laura, for the opportunity. My question goes to the second presenter, briefly to know about the fact that profit maximization is the focus of private sector businesses. And the pandemic brought a lot of hardship to all businesses across the globe. And in the midst of this pandemic, your project was focusing on getting them to do business ethically. I want to know from you what the response had been from them. What has been their reaction to this whole call from you that they operate more ethically within this period?
So who is this question for?
My question is to the second presenter.
Okay, great.
It's for me, Laura. Okay, thank you for the question. The question is appropriate, and it was one of our concern. There is a challenge, because as you said, businesses' primary or priority is to make a profit. So when we call training, for example, one of our activities, inviting for training. So the number of responding companies is not as we anticipate, but it doesn't mean there is no positive response at all. So there is a response, but somehow the concern that you have raised is what we have noticed. But it's not only this service that we provide. We provide them. Addis Chamber has different departments, about 10 departments, and there are units which focus on providing business development services that aim at supporting businesses, how they can make profits within these COVID circumstances. So it's a kind of balancing. Our department works on how businesses can operate their business ethically while maintaining their profit. So even if the number of responding companies is not as significant, but there is a positive response. During the training, we send them to collect posters, and willing companies approach to our office and collect posters to put on their in their compound. So there is a response, but the concern that we have raised is what we have noticed. It's an appropriate question and it's a challenge as well, but we try to figure out different approaches. We utilize different approaches so that we can get their attention or motivate them to take part in the running their business ethically. So.
Great, thank you so much. So we have a question now from Lola, and her question is for AACCSA. She asks, do they anticipate any reservations from companies in Ethiopia about using the public reporting application And if so, how do you plan to overcome those reservations?
Yes, we anticipate that, and in order to solve that in advance, we try to make the platform to be an attractive one that the business community would like to use it. For this, we include features that gives them general business information, so that business will be interested to use the platform to get business informations. So such features, and we include also features that gives them about events and news. So we try to include such features along with the reporting feature. So that's how we try to maximize the or overcome such challenge. Hybriding different features. Did I get the question?
Great, thank you so much. So we are running a couple minutes over time, but we wanted to make sure that we could get to everybody's questions. So if there's no other questions, then we can start to wrap up, and I'll pass it back to you, Carmen.
Thank you very much, Laura, and thank you to our panelists for their excellent insights and experience sharing. I would like to give our panelists one moment for any closing remarks that they have before we adjourn. So, Kobani, Sinidu, Mary, if you'd like to say one last thought before we finish, please.
Okay, so for me, just to say thank you for hosting this and giving the grant partners the opportunity to connect and to share the various innovative and novel interventions we have put together. For us, we believe this is just the beginning. Working with the private sector is one of the greatest panaceas to ensuring that the fight against corruption succeeds. And CIPE is one such body that we see as a very creditable and worthy partner who would help us facilitate this process going forward, and also linking us with our partners in the various countries. Thank you very much, Carmen and Laura and Lola for putting this together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary. We are very happy to partner with an organization like yours. Sinidu, please.
Yeah. I would like to take this opportunity to thank CIPE on behalf of Addis Ababa Chamber of Commerce and Sectoral Associations. It would have not been possible to implement this project had we not get the support. It's quite innovative and different that the private sector has never taken. So when the project is finalized, I hope it will be a remarkable project that our country can remember. I would like to thank the audience for following up our presentation and for participating in celebrations. And I understand that our concerns are also the concerns of others, which is good. So thank you, everyone, and have a nice time. Thank you for having me. Bye.
Thank you so much, Sinidu. Kobani, please.
Thank you very much, Carmen. I would like to thank CIPE for organizing this, and I think it has been a good platform to engage and share some of the issues, and also learn what some of our colleagues in Ghana and Ethiopia are doing. I think I took one or two notes that I think are very much important. And also I like extend our gratitude as TIZ, the support that we got from CIPE so far in terms of implementing this particular initiative. And must I say, it has been a very learning curve for us, because we have been used to working a lot with the public sector, and now involving the private sector has been a new initiative for us, and trying to learn as much as we can, and to also implement everything within the context of uncertainty during COVID-19, I think has been a very a key balancing act for the institution. And with the support of CIPE, I think we've been able to stand ground in most of this. And also, lastly, I'd like to thank the people that participated for their thought-provoking questions that are making us reflect also in terms of how we had actually shaped some of the how we have actually designed this particular initiative. And also thank everyone for listening, and hopefully we will engage more. And also please visit our tracker and drop us an inbox and share your thoughts about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kombani. I think some of the participants have already visited your tracker since we started this session. I would like to thank our panelists for their excellent contributions. I would like to thank all our attendees for their attention, but also for their questions. Also, many thanks to our colleagues at CIPE Africa. Behind this webinar, there are more colleagues than are here with us today. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great remainder of the day, and looking forward to hearing more about your work in the anti-corruption field. All the best. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.